A massive news story has been erupting over the past few days. Now, former Hearthstone pro player Blitzchung, in a post-match interview, surprised the broadcast by wearing a gas mask, exclaiming this phrase, translated from Mandarin, obviously, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our time." This was a Chinese broadcast, mind you, and in their culture, there isn't really a thing called free speech. Criticizing the government is a big no-no, and the Chinese government wants control over Hong Kong, and anything that defies them is going to make them upset. Blizzard responded in quite a heavy-handed manner, banning the player, Blitzchung, from pro Hearthstone events for an entire year and voiding out all of his prize winnings, even money he hasn't received yet, which reportedly equates to up to $10,000. In an official statement on the Hearthstone website, Blizzard states that they're all for freedom of expression, but of course using their broadcast as a place to stage a protest, no matter what side of the debate you fall on, can damage the reputation of Blizzard and therefore against the rules. Make no mistake, these type of incredibly strong rules are definitely in place with the Overwatch League and everything Blizzard does. You can expect if the Overwatch League was going on right now and in an interview, one of the players all of a sudden spurted out with some political speech, no matter what it was for or against, it would definitely get cracked down on. And I don't even think any of the players would attempt that kind of thing with their jobs on the line. Whereas Blitzchung doesn't have a full-time job playing professional Hearthstone, and he commented after the fact saying, "As you know, there are serious protests in my country now. My call on stream was just another form of participation of the protests that I wish to grab more attention. I put so much effort in that social movement in the past few months that I sometimes couldn't focus on preparing for my Grand Masters match. I know what my action on stream means. It could cause me a lot of trouble, even my personal safety in real life. But I think it's my duty to say something about the issue." Blitzchung is not exaggerating here. And with the coverage I've seen of this story thus far, this is the point that I really want to hammer home, that these kinds of protests aren't the same as how they operate in the West. Protesting in Western society nowadays is pretty casual, as opposed to many, many years ago, the American Revolution, 1776, protesting the powers that be was a life or death issue. That's the kind of severity we're talking about with the Hong Kong protests. And that would be the case even if free speech were permitted in China, which it isn't, which is something I'll explain after I get to the statement that the Blizzard Hearthstone China account made on Weibo, which is the Chinese social media site. Here it's translated and said, "We are very angered and disappointed at what happened at the event and do not condone it in any way, and we also highly object to the spreading of personal political beliefs in this manner. Effective immediately, we've banned the contestant from events and terminated work with the broadcasters. We will always respect and defend the pride of our country." Wow. For us in the West, this hits like a kick in the gut. Seen a lot of commentary about this statement where people say that they can't believe that an American company would pledge allegiance to China. And although I tend to have the same response, I want to add context to this. It's important to realize that Blizzard is split on this issue. Blizzard Hearthstone China, I assume, is comprised of Chinese citizens. Citizens who live in a culture where defending the honor of the country is a major norm, expected and enforced by the government. Blizzard employees in the West have a much similar reaction to the actions of their company as the media and the gamers out there expressing criticism. The individuals of the company, I have no doubt, are largely on the side that most of us would deem as the right one. Tensions between Hong Kong and China have spanned over years. If you put any effort into learning about the history of this at all, as a citizen of the West, it's hard not to come to their defense. In fact, it would be hypocritical of any of us who are spoiled with the rights and freedoms that we take advantage of and neglect to remember to protect on a day-to-day basis while not supporting Hong Kong. I'll link a bunch of resources in the video description for you to check any of the articles I linked on screen, but also more information about the Hong Kong protest. This Fox video brought me to tears by the end of it. You should go watch it for yourself, but in short, Hong Kong used to be a colony of Britain. And although Western imperialism was definitely evil in many ways, some of the good that it spread was values, rights and freedoms like free speech, so that even though Britain gave Hong Kong back to China in 97, many of their citizens still fight to keep many of those Western freedoms like free speech that they're struggling to maintain. The most recent protests are extremely controversial, as if the extrication bill passes, it would allow the Chinese government to go into Hong Kong to pull citizens out to prosecute them in China, where they can ignore the free speech protections that Hong Kong has for themselves. This is some seriously scary 1984 type stuff, and it's happening today. So one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video is to be clear where I stand on this issue. Obviously, I'm for democracy and free speech, without a doubt, but I also don't necessarily blame Blizzard for taking the actions that they've taken. Not only can they not allow a precedent for big political uprisings to just be on their broadcasts, they're not in the business of interfering with political unrest. This isn't the same thing as somebody's feelings being hurt over a statement made or some sort of virtue signaling nonsense. This is serious, and Blizzard is tangled up in the mix of it. I do hope that they stand for the Western values and reconsider the heavy action they've taken against the player Blitzchung, but it does make smart business sense to distance yourself from things that will put you in conflict with the biggest financial superpower in the world. Whether Blizzard makes a stand to support Hong Kong and potentially lose a huge percentage of their business probably doesn't even positively affect the protesters or the cause that they're rooting for, and only hurts Blizzard. It's not really Blizzard's job to act as a platform for political statements. They can't allow that to happen. And even if, say, they do unban Blitzchung, could they really even have him in competition again without all of this flaring up with controversy? This is why it's important to keep politics away from gaming, so that these groups that don't get along with each other for one reason or another can agree on something. But if you allow the politics to be injected into it, then you kind of have to take a side. I see a lot of people making demands of Blizzard without actually thinking through what those mean. Let's put it this way. The company can both disallow tumultuous protest statements on their broadcasts and also be in support of Hong Kong internally, but play it neutral because they're a video game company, not some political entity. If they want to keep a good relationship with the entire globe, they have to be neutral. And I know this is complicated because I'm giving opinions for the micro and the macro. On a personal level, my favorite band is Rage Against the Machine. Blitzchung's actions are badass, and I can't imagine the craziness that is to live in Hong Kong and be mixed up with such an important cultural movement. But at the same time, on a macro sense, I'm not so sure how Blizzard helps them. I'd feel a lot better about saying, yeah, Blizzard, stand up for what's right, if it wasn't going to mean that many people could lose their jobs in the process of just standing by a statement. Doesn't it make more sense for Blizzard to just be neutral in these kinds of matters and let society work its way through these problems? I hope they tune back the punishment, but what's the alternative? Do we just let broadcasts get hijacked to make whatever political statements a player wants to promote? Doesn't really make sense. I'd feel far different about this if Blizzard was cracking down on a player's individual platform. If on their own stream or their own social media, Blizzard then was drawing a line in the sand, I'd say, yeah, that's too far, but policing their own broadcasts is no different than anything they've done in the past. And maybe I'm just not shocked because of how strict Blizzard's been in this regard as of late anyway. I think to the poem, first they came for the Pepes, and I said nothing because I was not a green frog. A little poetry humor to try to lighten the mood in this video, but I hope you see my point anyway. I don't think Blizzard has a good play to make, and I expect it would continue to be the company standard to try to block out all political noise from the core gameplay signal that they're trying to promote. Because what's the alternative? Does Blizzard cut ties with China? Sacrifice a huge percentage of their revenue? What does that even accomplish? Does that free Hong Kong? Like, Blizzard doesn't even have the power to do that. That's in the hands of the local citizens and the local government. Am I being too realistic with this here? I know most of this conversation is spoken in the language of slacktivism, where hashtags and retweets are propped up as if they have any weight whatsoever, but they don't. I guess it's unpopular to say nowadays, but I'm hesitant to tell other people or companies or whatever what they should sacrifice for my beliefs. It's very easy to demand that. It's very hard to make real sacrifices. And I just feel if you're not willing to do that yourself, it's hard to criticize others for not doing so either. Okay, that's a lot of real talk for one video. We'll let you chew on that. I think Blizzard's in a pretty impossible no-win situation, and it's pretty unfortunate for all parties involved. involved. My heart goes out to those who are actually fighting the good fight in Hong Kong, but I don't have much sympathy for those who want to wear virtue signaling on their sleeves while making no sacrifices and no actual impact on the matter. Pretty heavy video. Hopefully we can get back to talking about games again in the next upload. So if you want to check that out, be sure to hit subscribe. But that's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.